I'm an avid and experienced urban explorer. I have visited many different abandoned sites. This place I'm writing about has been explored several times by others since, but when I visited, it wasn't a common knowledge location, and all of the buildings were still intact except for the main house, which had, from what I had heard, burned, leaving nothing but the outer stone wall. Nothing but the outer wall remains. All the other buildings were torn down since I was there. To more recent urban explorers, it is known as the Stone Castle, and more recently, the Osler Castle. This is the name given by the Heritage Society that has decided to fix it up. When my boyfriend at the time discovered it, he saw it in the distance from a roof he was working on in Oromodonte, Ontario. There was, but not anymore, a large barn, a carriage house, and towards the back of the property, a stable. The first weekend we both head off together, we made the hour drive to explore it. The property was absolutely stunning. On the top of a hill back from the road, you could almost imagine living surrounded by such beauty, and we did exactly that. The house itself was gone except for the wall, and if you looked in the basement window, you could see an old stove lying amongst the wreckage. You could tell it had been a beautiful home at one time, to whoever owned it. Being the explorer I was, I insisted that we investigate every single corner of every single building that was on the property. And although my ex was less than enthusiastic about it, I insisted. I honestly did not see the point of driving for an hour just to look at the outside of the buildings. No, I had to go in the buildings. The first building we explored was the barn, both upstairs and down. Down in the basement of the barn is where things went from wow to WTF really fast. In the basement, it had been used as a place for satanic sacrifices. There was satanic artwork all over, a knife with what appeared to be blood on it, and an altar with black candles, and a bottle of what smelled like blood. The most disturbing piece was that whatever satanic group was using it, they had built a makeshift cage out of the silo, with chains inside and everything. My boyfriend at the time wanted to get the heck out of there as fast as possible, but I convinced him to stay, so we could explore the rest of the buildings on the property. I told him it's probably just a bunch of kids just screwing around. No big deal, right? Wrong. Our next stop was the stables at the back of the property, and honestly, I was so caught up in my love for exploring, he would not have been able to persuade me to leave without going in every single building, no matter what. I opened the door into the stable and the smell hit me. Rotting flesh, and the entire room was littered with animal corpses. Dogs, cats, rabbits, even coyotes and foxes. They had been horribly mutilated, and it was absolutely the worst thing I've ever laid my eyes on. As soon as my boyfriend saw that, he grabbed me and said that we were leaving right now at that moment, and that killing animals is not stupid kids doing stupid things, that this is some serious stuff. So we started to leave, but there was one more building I wanted to check on the way out. The carriage house. He said no effing way were we going there and stomped off the hill back to the main house, assuming I would follow. But I didn't follow. I went around the hill by myself and took a quick peek in the carriage house. The carriage house was anticlimactic, had absolutely nothing in it. It's actually a good thing that I snuck off like I did, because if I hadn't, we wouldn't have seen them coming. They would have been able to sneak up on us as we were coming up the hill and do who knows what to us. First one I noticed was an adult male with a baseball bat. He actually opened our car door and was rifling through things in our car, trying to find a key, I'm guessing. There were about 8 people in total in the group, ranging from adults, I would say in their 30s, to teenagers and children no more than 12 or 13. They all had weapons, golf clubs, sticks, a cane, and baseball bats. I yelled at the guy about what the heck he thought he was doing going through our car, and my boyfriend came charging over the hill, bless his heart, right through the posse of creeps and weirdos who seemed to be lying in wait for us. It appeared that we had ruined whatever plans they had in mind, because they immediately backed off. Some even tried to hide their weapons behind their backs, which was just stupid if you ask me. Who wouldn't notice a baseball bat behind someone's back? The baseball bat guy demanded to know what we were doing there, and I demanded to know what the heck he thought he was doing in our car. He didn't answer, just looked at me all nervous. My ex-boyfriend said we were just admiring the architecture of the house and that we were just leaving, and they let us get into our car and drive off, which in itself was a miracle. I'd say in light of what we had discovered on the property. They followed us in a black pickup with no plates for a good 20 minutes. Instead of heading for home, we went to the closest city, which was Barrie, Ontario. Filed a report with the policeman who seemed more shaken than us, and headed home. My ex never went back to that roofing job again. He had somebody else finish it and he went to another one. I wanted to go back, but after telling people what happened, I couldn't find anyone to go with me. My ex and I continued various explorations, but we both started carrying knives. I still carry one to this day, even when I hike. I have not read of anyone else having similar experiences at Satan's Castle. Recently, my cousin, who was also an explorer, contacted me with the place she wanted to explore. Guess where and guess what? We have made arrangements to go there in the next couple of weeks. So on that note, and many years later, Satan's Castle cult. Let's hope we don't meet again, and to any other urban explorers out there, please be careful, because you never know what you might come across in these abandoned places. This happened to me when I was 15 in 1994. At my high school in Orinda, California, we had driver's ed, and to graduate you had to log 8 hours of driving. The way everybody did this was hire Safest Way driving trainers. The company would drive to your house and pick you up, and you would drive for an hour in the student driver car. Easy, convenient, and fun, and our parents didn't have to risk their pretty cars. So my mom made the 8 appointments for me to drive 1 hour with Safest Way from 4 to 5. I was annoyed, really, because I already knew how to drive. I'd been sneaking out driving all year while my mom worked nights because, you know. But I obviously couldn't tell her this, so I had to take these lame lessons. The guy showed up, and I was sad that he was so fat and creepy looking right away. My hormone-crazed teen girl fantasy of having a Brad Pitt look-alike to drive around with was thoroughly smashed, but I had to go, so I did. He showed me that the car had a brake pedal on the passenger side for safety, from shit student drivers, and I told him we wouldn't need it because I was an awesome driver. He laughed and said something like, "I bet that's not the only thing you're good at." And whoosh, right over my head, because I actually preened at the compliment. Literally shaking my head right now. It only took like 5 minutes for him to see that I did indeed already know how to drive, so he said, "You really don't need lessons, but we still have to log the time, so let's just go to dinner." "Totally," I exclaimed, because I was so stupid. Seriously, I was again preening with oblivious happiness at how awesome I was. Cringe, I know. Dinner was McDonald's, and we ate in the car. He was going on and on about how pretty I was and how great my swimmer's body was, and it finally hit me that it was creepy. After I got that clued into my teen bimbo brain, I wanted to go home. He said it was time anyway, and off we went. At home, I quickly reverted to a dumb shit teen and forgot about it. He picked me up the next day, and when I got in the car, he gave me a present. It was a shell necklace that looked old, but I took it to be nice. Then he said to just drive and follow his directions. We got onto the freeway, big no-no, and went through the Caldecott Tunnel to Berkeley. Way too far. Another big no. We were supposed to stay within 10 miles of the house, and then he directed me up to Grizzly Peak in the hills. It's super curvy and in parts deserted. That's when things got weird. He started to brake with his brake in a place that was totally deserted and put his hands on my thigh, rubbing higher and higher. Well, at least I knew this was bad and that I was dense, and I had to act, so I slammed on the gas. Well, with him braking and me flooring the gas, the car was still able to go, and go I did. I told him to stop touching me or I would drive on the wrong side of the road, with blind turns, and we would die. I started to do it and he relented and laughed like it was just a joke, asking why I was so mad. I didn't seem like a girl that would be so uptight, blah blah blah. I just drove home silent and furious. He kept trying to make light of everything the whole way, but I wasn't having it. I got home, ran inside, and told my mom everything. She freaked and called Safest Way immediately. He was fired. He also had other complaints, so yeah. Anyways, a couple of days later, he showed up at a swim meet but disappeared before my coach could see him. Then he quote-unquote bumped into me at a sushi place I was meeting my mom at. He's walking towards me and I'm about to scream when my mom walks up. He turns and jogs away. We called the cops, but you know the drill. Nothing could be done. Word vomit. 2 months later, my best friend had to start her driving lessons, and we joked about how maybe she'll get a creep and to not be an idiot like I was. I was hanging at her house waiting for her driver to come, and we were up on our roof balcony by the pool when we saw the car drive up her driveway. She started down to get her stuff and get the door. I waved by. I was just going to stay and swim till she got back. When I turned back and looked down, the driver was walking up to the driveway. And it was the same guy. My friend was about to open her front door to the creep. I thought fast and yelled down to him, "Yoo-hoo, asshole. Up here. Yeah, I know you and the cops are coming. Better run, freak." He saw me, heard me, and ran into the car and left. Thankfully, because my friend was like 3 stories down and could not hear me, and I needed him to leave before she opened the door. After we did the obligatory teenage girl freak out, we called the cops. They showed up and were getting the 411 when another Safeway car drove up. This guy was her real driver. He said that creepo was indeed fired when my complaint was filed, but somebody had stolen one of the cars a couple weeks later. They didn't connect the incidents, but they sure as heck did then. We were eventually told that he was found in the car and arrested. In the car were a knife, rope, and I shit you not, many pictures of me and my friends. He apparently still had access to the school's appointment logs and was going to pick up my friend and do whatever the heck twisted thing to her because of me, I guess. What he didn't count on was me being there with her and seeing him. What if I hadn't been there though? And what if I didn't stay to swim? All these what ifs I still think about to this day. Turns out he faked his identity to get the job and was wanted in Alabama or Arizona or something. I can't remember. For some crazy assault and was shipped there to stand trial. I don't know what happened and don't remember anyone talking to me about it again. I'm Irish and was studying in the UK to get my bachelor's degree. I don't know how common this is elsewhere, but where I lived, it seemed to be common enough that landlords renting to students privately would convert the front downstairs room into an extra bedroom. This is where my bedroom was for my first year. I didn't mind it too much, but it was a bit weird having the front door directly in my room, especially since for those who aren't familiar with terraced houses in the UK, there isn't a front garden usually, and we just had a small section separating the front door from the path outside. By now, I'd been living here for a few months, and I could recognize the difference between the sound of someone walking past on the path and the sound of someone stepping towards the front door. On the night that this happened, I was totally alone in the house, as both my housemates were away from home for the weekend. This was a little unusual since neither of them usually went home except for special occasions, but I think it might have been Valentine's Day around that time or something similar. It was about 1 in the morning and I was lying in bed and on the phone with my boyfriend at the time, as we were long distance. As we were talking, I could hear some footsteps outside and immediately recognized that it was someone right outside the door. I kept listening and could just hear them shuffling around a bit, and then they started fumbling with the door handle. That spooked me a lot, and I told my boyfriend that I was going to have a quick look out the window to see if I could spot whoever it was. I get up and part the curtains and quite literally press my face and hands against the window to get a look outside. Since it was pitch black by now and the street lights had been turned off, it took a second then for me to realize what I was looking at, but whoever it was who was outside was doing the exact same thing that I was, pressed up against the window and staring in at me, inches away. I didn't scream. I just felt as if all the wind had been knocked out of me, and I remember feeling like somebody had just dunked me into a pool of ice water. Whoever it was looked to be male. I couldn't see his face properly, but I just remember he was wearing a hoodie. He ran when he saw me, and after trying to collect myself, I quickly told my boyfriend and then rang the police. I don't remember how long it took for them to get there, but there wasn't a whole lot they could do, I remember. I think they might have done a quick patrol in the area, but nothing ever came of it. It was absolutely one of the most terrifying things that's happened to me, and I can't figure out at all why he was trying to break in. At the time, I had my light on, which would have been visible from the window even with the curtains drawn, so I figured I could rule out that he was a junkie or squatter looking for a place to crash. I don't know if maybe he'd been watching me and my housemates for a while, seeing 3 girls live alone, and thought maybe this would make an easy burglary or worse. But thankfully, I didn't have any trouble again afterwards. I couldn't sleep for days after though. I remember staying up until early one morning, just watching movies on my laptop to feel less alone, until I eventually fell asleep from exhaustion, once it started to get light outside. Since I was here from Ireland, I didn't even have any family members close by who I could call for or go and stay with, and it was the most agonizingly long weekend of my life waiting for my housemates to come back. I definitely think I've developed a slight phobia now looking out the window while it's dark outside. Back in 2013, I was living with my ex at the time who lived near a nice country village, and as I was in between jobs at the time, I picked up a job at the local garden center. It was casual retail work, fairly decent pay and easygoing enough that I could take coffee breaks frequently and wear basically whatever I liked, as long as I wore my work polo shirt. It was walking distance from my ex's house and full of people of all ages who were the most lovely people I ever met. Most of the regular customers who came to the garden center were usually sweet old people who would visit the cafe because we had free teas and discounted lunches for old age pensioners if they had a store card, so You often got to know all of them, and some of them we gave nicknames even. Most of them were sweet, like Pink Hair Lady, a badass 80-year-old grandma who wore a tasseled leather jacket and bright pink hair. Then there was the camper van couple, who used to drive a really cool camper van with bright orange flowers painted on it. You get the idea. With creepy artist man though, he gave most of the young girls weird vibes. He wore a straw hat, was in his late 40s, had round gold-rimmed glasses, and would wear strange graphic shirts with naked women on them, or Professional Pussy Patrol sort of slogans on the back. He always wore ripped jeans where his knees were always hanging out of them and were always really dirty with paint or mud or something. He had this weird half smile that would never leave his face and kind of a leer that made people feel uncomfortable. He would take off his glasses and clean them constantly, which kind of made you think he was trying to get a better look at the girls who worked there, which was weird, especially because we had a lot of younger ones. 16 plus, usually school leavers. Anyway, it was a roasting hot summer's day and I had gratefully accepted the job of watering the hanging baskets outside where I could avoid the humid, sweaty heat of the greenhouses. I was wearing black shorts and my red polo and my tool belt to prune and dead hand plants as I went. With the hose in my hand and sunnies on my face, I was busy but enjoying the solitary job at the quietest part of the garden center. Well, hello there. Out of practically nowhere, he slipped out behind some wooden trellises and looked me up and down, smiling with his weird two small teeth. His eyes lingered on me for what felt like an uncomfortable few seconds, and I turned off my hose and asked him if he needed anything. He shook his head and kind of shrugged, still smirking at my legs. Okay, sir, have a nice day. Let me know if you need anything. I turned to continue. I've never seen you here before. You're a new one, huh? Huh? Me? Well, I've been here for 8 months now. I must have missed the memo that a beauty like you started. You have a nice tan. You look young. Thanks. I'm 23. Anyways, I have to get back to work. Nice to meet you, he said. I suddenly remember my name badge and get slightly irritated that he now knows my full name. I make a beeline for the smoking area where the tool shed was, with an excuse to grab some smaller gardening gloves, and by the time I returned to the floor, he had left. As the weeks went by, he would come into the store regularly, usually mid-afternoon, coincidentally, or so I thought around the time I started my shift. Most of the time I was the only cashier, so I'd have to serve him. He would buy the smallest, most pointless things, like floristry wire or a tiny bag of birdseed. It seemed like he would purposely make a purchase with the intention of interacting with me. He would make comments about my appearance, mostly statements like, "You have your hair different today. Yesterday you had it down." Or, "You have new glasses." Or, "That's a different lip color than yesterday." He would always announce my name loudly and deliberately during every interaction. I felt uncomfortable, but I was 23 and just politely shrugged it off. Around Christmas time, I was decorating the artificial trees and he cornered me in the forest of them at the back of the store. He jumped out from behind one and made me jump, to which I was kind of pissed about him doing because I dropped a glass ornament and it smashed. He bent down also and tried to help, grabbing my wrist and telling me not to touch the glass. His grip was scarily tight and forceful and his hands were clammy and gross. I slipped my hand out of his grip and asked if I could help him with anything. That's when it got weird. He pulled out a leaflet from his back pocket and told me he was an artist and had a Christmas art show happening in the local church hall. And he wanted me to go with him. He told me that he was a painter and he thought I would like his work. I had never indicated I was interested in art, to him or anyone else for that matter, which is why I thought it was strange. I asked him if he wanted me to pin the leaflet to the local event board, and he reached out and touched my arm and said, "No, the invitation is specifically for you." He pointed his finger and jabbed it into my breast as he said, "You." So I'm standing there in a dark corner, obscured from view by artificial Christmas trees, just kind of cornered by this guy who was touching me now. I cringed away and said, "I was busy with my boyfriend that day. Sorry," and kind of scampered off. I remember feeling really strange after that because of the fact he grabbed my wrist and jabbed his finger into my chest that way. I told a few of my colleagues about it and they all told me that they would warn me next time he was in the store so I could maybe hang out in the storeroom until he was gone. Well, that memo must have missed a few of the temp Christmas staff because one day I get told by one, "Your friend is asking for you at the tills." It wasn't unusual for my friends to stop by as it was fairly popular for gifts, etc. So, thinking it was maybe my ex's mom or something, I head to the till and there he is. He's holding a piece of paper now. I cringe, but he had seen me now so I walk over and ask what he needed. He passed the paper over and asked me to open it. Folded up was a drawing of me, with exaggerated breasts and cartoon-like eyes, watering the hanging baskets in a sexual kind of position. Kind of stood there and said thank you, but I couldn't keep it as I thought it was inappropriate to take gifts from customers. I handed it back to him and he kind of looked at me with his angry stare. He turned around and walked out without another word. By this point, I had had enough. I knocked on my manager's door and told him about the whole scenario that just happened and all the previous interactions I had with him over the past year. He watched the CCTV and agreed that it was strange the way he gave me this gross picture and told me he would talk to him if he came back. He praised me for my reaction though to his advances and said that I was doing the right thing. And he would try and see him off next time. The next day was a Sunday and I was not due into work. My boss calls me and tells me he just received a call from headquarters stating that an anonymous caller had called in to report a staff member inappropriately coming on to a customer. The staff member they had described and named was me. The caller had said that I had been inappropriate towards him at work, had offered to have sex with him, had led him on and was obviously promiscuous, and that I had been pursuing him for over a year. The jerk even described a fictitious relationship we had, and ranted loudly about how I had been cheating on my boyfriend before hanging up. Headquarters luckily didn't believe a word, as my manager had already mentioned the guy to one of the higher-ups, but they thought it was wise to let me know about this crazy guy and suggested I report to the police. The next day I did just that. The officer I spoke to said that he matched the description of a man who was a local pest, somebody who often harasses young girls in the local area. He was also known to stalk girls in his car and had attempted to abduct a young woman 4 years ago. The police officers assured me they would file the report and talk to him officially and that he was not allowed in the garden center or anywhere near me again, and if he did, I was to call the police and he would be arrested. Unfortunately though, it never stopped him from sending a ranting letter to my workplace, addressed to me saying that I would regret it if I didn't take him back and receive the gift he drew of me. Fortunately, the police saw this as an unsolicited contact and he was thankfully arrested. Several years ago, I was working in a shopping mall as a marketing manager. My job was very much in the public eye in my community. My main job was to get people into the shopping center, mostly by hosting events such as fashion shows, music events, and beauty pageants, mostly that I presented myself, so I was well known around town. I had a good group of friends that I had known since high school and we saw each other regularly. When I was around 29, I had been married for 4 years and just had my son. My friend Chrissy, not her real name, had just ended her second marriage. It was a running joke in the group that she really liked wedding cake. She had just hooked up with a new man and wanted us to get together that weekend so she could introduce him. In typical Chrissy fashion, there was around a month in time moving from husband number 2 to moving in with the new man Jake, not his real name either. The meeting went off without an issue. We all attended, muttering between ourselves that it would never last. He was a lot older than she was, recently divorced with a very interfering ex. He was also no oil painting. Around 3 weeks after Chrissy announced she was pregnant. One day I walked into my office at the shopping mall to find a large bunch of roses and a teddy on my desk. I received flowers regularly from suppliers, etc., so it was not a surprise, but the teddy was new. I am not and have never been a teddy kind of girl. The small card just said, "I can't wait to see you again." I asked the secretary if she knew where they came from, and she said she had no clue. They were delivered to the security office before any of us arrived. Then the phone call started, direct to my office phone, skipping the reception. Only a few people knew this number. At first, there were silent calls and just heavy breathing on the line. After a few days of silence, he started to talk. Things like, "I am watching you. I like your skirt. You are beautiful. I wish you were my girlfriend," etc. Each time I slammed the phone down, the voice was gravely and sounded as if the person was trying to make his voice deeper than it was. After daily calls for a week, I went to my boss who had the number changed. The calls stopped after this. Around a month after this, we hosted a get-together at my house, and Chrissy and Jake attended. As he walked through the door and greeted me, I froze. As soon as he spoke, I knew it was him. Chrissy was by now very pregnant, and I did not want to upset her, so I never told her. I never confronted him about it, and he apologized and said he did not mean to creep me out. They left early that day, and they moved to another town a few months after. The marriage did happen, and I was invited. I declined. The marriage lasted a year. Chrissy is now engaged again. She has been 3 times since her and Jake divorced. I did tell her about it a few years later. She said that she understood me not telling her at the time. She would not have believed me anyway. He must have gotten my number from her address book. He had apparently done this to another woman at their church after they moved.